We're here, right? Stephanie White, long time coming. She was a firefighter, paramedic for almost 2 decades or more in Fairfax County, Virginia. She's now the editor-in-chief of Firefighter Nation, the host of the 5 After Midnight podcast. We were just reminiscing how she was one of the first people I wanted to get on the show early on, and now 90 episodes in, here we are. So welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me, Jake.
Yeah, of course. So I don't know where I want to start this. I've thought a couple ways. I think that I'm interested in what you just did last week.
Like a trap.
Yeah. I'm interested in what you were doing last week because I know what you were doing, and I'm interested how it went and what your experience was like. So, for the uninitiated or maybe the people that are less creepy about your whereabouts, you were working on the big project, which is choosing FDIC classes. Is that correct?
That is correct. And first off, starting any statement with, I know what you were doing last week really feels like an IA interview right here.
But I mean, the biggest conference in the world, fire conference, that is, everyone and their mother submits, and you get to be part of the group that selects who gets chosen. Walk me through what that process even looks like. I can't imagine the amount of submissions versus the selection versus the conversations that must happen around these selection decisions.
So I love that you asked this because I was at the FDIC advisory board meeting, and the advisory board gets a certain amount of submissions, and they all go through them and they all grade them. And there's a space for notes. And one of the things when you submit to FDIC is they ask, have you ever written something? Have you ever done a podcast with us? Any of that kind of thing. Because there are 4 brands that make up FDIC. There's GEMS, there's Fire Apparatus, there's Fire Engineering, and then there's Firefighter Nation. So it is hard to pick classes, especially if you've never written an article or a podcast or anything like that. Because now we're sitting here going, I can't hear this person's voice in my head, or I can't see their writing or their words. So it is incredibly hard to be able to grade these submissions, especially if it's somebody whose work you're not familiar with. So that hard task really goes to David Rhodes and Dana, who does most of the organizing for the conference. And they get in a room with Mike Champo, and it's like waiting for the Pope to be announced, pretty much. They go in there with Brent, who handles all the hot classes, and it's just it's quite the session. I get a text here and there of, hey, hey, do you need this person? Do you want this person? It's a whole puzzle that they put together, because you also, at FDIC, you don't just have the classroom classes. You have workshops, you have hot classes. So
do you have any grasp on the amount of submissions you get versus the instructors that are selected? Like what the, I want to say attrition rate, but that's not the right word. It would be like, what's the selection difference versus submission to accepted?
I want to say there were 200 classroom sessions last year, and about 1,200 people submit.
Wow. Yeah.
So and again, you also have hot sessions that get submitted and picked as well. And we have symposiums and summits. So, but it's still not an incredibly large number, because despite being such a huge conference, we do have some redundancy in instructors, simply because of the price involved in bringing people out, flying them out, putting them up. So we do have them kind of in multiple categories. So it's compared to submission to acceptance, it's a large difference, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. And it's kind of, I guess most people that are trying to break into the firefighter instruction world, or any of the like emergency services instruction world, like this is kind of their, Everest to try to get in. And then obviously like the very rare exception that someone gets to be the keynote is kind of the pinnacle of a fire service instruction career. And so many of those keynotes have been, these lighthouses in the careers of so many people in the fire service. I can tag, pretty much my entire fire service journey back to the 2009 Ray McCormick speech And I can't tell you the amount of people that have went down the line that says, wow, FDIC's keynote has changed my life. And so I remember when I talked to Chief Rhodes about, what's the burden to make those selections? It's crazy because you're not only choosing the person to speak this year, but you're also choosing like the voice of the fire service for that given year, because these keynotes are so monumental to the culture. Do you think that inside those selection committees, like, are we, I mean, I don't know how much of this is closed door versus open door versus whatever, but I mean, are we like debating, we got these two guys and now they're like, in my brain, I want it to be like a March Madness style bracket in which everyone's battling their way to the top to these positions. Or is it really much more of a subjective, this one feels good for this year, we haven't covered that topic before kind of thing?
A lot of it, again, relies on, okay, do we have somebody who can back up that this person is a great instructor? Because we want to provide values to, I mean, it's expensive to attend FDIC, right? So it's a big weight of taking a chance on somebody, and then maybe they won't be teaching a great class and your students will be disappointed. So it's a big weight of, do we know them? Can we look them up on YouTube? Can we see examples of their work? Is there somebody to vouch for them? It does, I think, get a little March Madness in that the advisory committee, they are asked, hey, who are your top picks? Who do you really think is up and coming? Who's really great that you can vouch for? So it does get a little bracketish, but there is an excitement of, there were a couple proposals this year where I was like, nobody has taught on this. I don't know this person. I'm going to go have to do some major digging, but I absolutely love this proposal because I've never heard anybody teaching on this before. So
cool. And that process, it's a week. How long do you spend actually deliberating?
So I think they normally do, I think Dana and David, it's 2 to 3 days of seeing where everything fits. Crazy. I know there were about 10 classes over last Friday, so they were really having to whittle it down.
And then there's also things like, I know you had the podcast stage last year, right? And so there's that whole angle of how are we managing that? And I assume you're in large part facilitating that process too?
So that is, the wellness stage is my little baby. We don't actually do podcasts from it. So we've got a podcast booth, and then we have the wellness stage. And then this year we're actually adding a wellness symposium as well. So those fall under my homework.
That's under your purview?
Under my purview.
Okay, that's great. And so what's the goal for it? What's the goal for the symposium versus the stage?
The stage is going to be a little bit more, it does feel like a podcast, and we are recording it, but it's not a live podcast out. And it's, I think, a lot more of your hot topic version of it, more panels, more young guys talking. Whereas the symposium, the goal is, so it's going to be brain, body, family, and organization. And I've talked before about how I'm really tired of the term mental health, because I feel like it's just this siloed picture of firefighter wellness. So we're going to be talking about all the things that go into having a completely healthy firefighter. Your brain, which is sleep, hypervigilance, all these factors that affect how you go about your day, really, and can mimic mental health issues. Listen, if you don't sleep for 48 hours, your brain is going to be in a whole different place, right? You are going to feel some despair that you might not have felt. Things are going to affect you in ways that they wouldn't affect you if you have sleep. So the goal with that is just to bring in research, but also to bring in some firsthand account stuff and combine it all together and show people that your health and your mental health isn't just this momentary breakdown crisis or one season of your life. It's all these different things, your family, your culture, and your organization that go into how you wake up every morning and have your mindset.
Hey there, King. If you could do me a favor and like and subscribe to the podcast. If you do. If you don't, then don't. That's okay. But if you do, it's nice to click that button. It makes a big difference for us. Follow the show on social media. Share the show when you see it. And more than anything, thanks for listening. I appreciate you. This podcast is brought to you in part by Hikes Boots. You can tell a lot about a brand by the way they choose to advertise. And Hikes didn't ask me to say anything specific. What they did was they sent me some boots. They sent me their Fire Eagle Air and the Fire Eagle Extreme. These are both structural firefighting boots. One is a lace-up boot. One is a pull-on boot. I was skeptical about the lace-up boot, but man, let me tell you, one handle, pull it tight, tightens around your calf, tightens around your foot. It feels like an athletic shoe, except for just like super supportive, super comfortable. I love to wear them. If you want to find out more information about them, check it out at hikesusa.com. That's HAIXUSA.com, or check the show notes for the direct link. Ragaku. Today's episode is brought to you by Ragaku Analytical Devices, the folks that have been bringing you the 1064 nanometer ramen longer than a lot of us have even been doing hazmat. And, they just launched their 4th generation handheld analyzer, the Icon X. It's built specifically for real world stuff hazmat teams deal with every day. We're talking about dirty powders, mixed materials, dyes, colors, all the things that make other instruments throw a tantrum. The 1064 nanometer laser means reduced fluorescence. So you get fast, reliable chemical ID in under a minute instead of staring at a blank screen wondering what went wrong. And this isn't just a new platform. It's an entire upgrade of a system. It's a whole new toolbox. It supports new accessories, including standoff analysis, so you can get the answers without getting too close. If you want to analyze what has been evolving right alongside the hazmat world, check out Ragaku's newest ramen at ragakuanalytical.com. Or check the show notes. Back to the show. I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing that you have some hot takes in that community based on the way you describe it and based on the way that there seems to be a little sharpness in the way that you describe how other people describe it, maybe. So give me the Stephanie White mental health hot take that you're going to die on the hill of.
I think that we're doing it wrong but well-intentioned at the moment. So 10 years ago, I don't think we had mental health stuff, right? And what we needed the most was we needed emergent, keep people from harming themselves, keep people from getting addictions, keep people safe in this moment resources. And I think we did a good job of standing those up. We have peer teams now. We have clinicians. We have these different things that are, if you are in crisis, we can help you. But that's not mental health. That's crisis health. Your mental health is, what is the state of Stephanie White for the next month? What are my moods looking like? How do I interact with my family? Am I staying in a dark room for the entire day, or am I going out, being healthy, working out, spending time with friends, spending time outside? Those things are your mental health. Your mental health is just not this one siloed emergent situation. And I think it's time for a change. I think we need to be, I did hear about resilience for a hot minute, and resilience was starting to encompass all those things, but then I think we took it a bit of a different direction of being just able to handle things thrown at you. We're able to handle things thrown at you because you're healthy in all these categories. And I think it's time we better define the terms of holistic, happy, healthy human being. And if you have that, you're then able to be resilient, and then hopefully you won't have that crisis moment versus just this one silo that we focus on.
How much burden does a department carry to solve that for their members versus the members and solving it for themselves?
I love that you asked this question. I think a department carries the burden of evaluating their schedule, right? Looking at how much their members are sleeping versus not sleeping. That's on the organization. You need to be monitoring what call volume factors, what crisis factors go into your people, and where your responsibility is with shifts. I think you do have a responsibility to have a clinician, peer team, and things that if your person is in crisis, they can reach out to. David Rhodes and I had an interesting conversation recently about the 2472. And he talked to a department where they were saying, yeah, we switched to it, but now the guys are staying up and they're not getting sleep at home because suddenly it's party time. I got I got extra time, right? We're all kind of little kids in a way, which we're like, ooh, I don't have to go to work tomorrow. I can stay up late versus maybe having to be more vigilant and regimented before. And I think that's why I love you that you asked this question. I think we are missing a lot, that there is a particular burden on us as firefighters of, hey, yes, I can complain about sleep, but am I not going to bed until 12 o'clock or 2 a.m. because I'm scrolling TikTok, MySpace, whatever the of the moment thing is?
MySpace.
They're bringing it back, man. I'm pretty
Are they?
excited,
Oh
allegedly.
man.
But there is a certain burden on us that we don't talk about. If I'm being a fat mofo and I am out there just loading my body with junk food and I am not taking care of it, well, that's me being irresponsible physically and mentally. That's going to affect my mental health when it comes to I'm not going to be able to do the job properly and take care of my brothers and sisters. And I'm more likely to not be able to absorb calls and hits and stuff like that. So, department, peer teams, clinicians, be evaluating the factors that go into your firefighter's day in life. Don't be overloading your master calendar with drills when they need to be doing company drills. It's stuff like that. But I don't think we put enough emphasis on what's our responsibility as firefighters and where do we need to be diligent as well. So thank you for asking that question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that comes down to a larger problem in the fire service. And I just had talked to Candace Ashby about this a couple of weeks ago, which is just we have an accountability problem. Everyone wants to blame someone else and nobody wants to take the blame for themselves. Yeah, exactly. But it's, we think about accountability in terms of, a lack of training. We think of accountability in terms of lack of owning up to our mistakes. But oftentimes, I think we miss the accountability when it comes to the topic you're talking about right there, which is our own mental health and well-being, which is, it is our burden to carry that because we can't expect somebody else to solve our problems. If we have them, we need to consider them problems and do something about it. But how do we motivate a group of generally people that want to bury and distance from some of these problems and get them motivated to, self-clean, for lack of a better term.
And I think, and I can't pinpoint when in time it started, but suddenly, at least on the internet, I'm starting to see all these conversations, and I think I have been for about 6 to 12 months of it's putting all the crap on the departments. And my organizational culture is crap because of this and this and this and this and this. And just like Candace talks about accountability, that's such a struggle for me because you can change the entire culture in your firehouse, right? Might take you a moment, but you can change that in your firehouse, which might be contagious and catch on in your battalion. And that's how you change culture. But you have to be accountable for where you are. And I think it came from we really, looking in my little siloed part of the world, we started to take authority away from officers in the firehouse. And it got to the point where we weren't even allowed to change light bulbs by ourselves. And really some of the basic adult responsibilities got taken away, which is crazy because you're trusting a group of people to save human lives and you're trusting us with $1 million equipment, right? And I think that's where this culture of helplessness started to creep in because it's not just a lack of accountability, it's a culture of helplessness as well. And I can't tell you how to change that other than smacking a couple people across the head and saying, hey, you need to own this. This is your firehouse. This is your culture. This is your sleep schedule. This is your health. This is what you're putting into your body. This is how you're not working out. I mean, how do you tell a group of people to be an adult? Because that basically is what that is, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's bringing the positivity back of, hey, you do have the power to change things. I think people feel helpless right now. And I think that's going, we reflect general society, right? I think society is looking at politics and going, oh, we're helpless because these people on this side and this side are doing stupid things. You pay their salaries. You're their bosses that elect them, right? It's the same thing in the firehouse. Stop feeling helpless. You are the mass majority. You run the calls. If you weren't here, that fire chief wouldn't have a job. So own your culture, own all your stuff. It's somebody is going to have to be in charge of bringing that reminder and positivity back of, no, look at this example of how this firehouse created change or this person created change. Because you don't see that a whole lot. You hear about the people effing up. You see all the different fights on the internet. When was the last time you saw a really cool story of a firefighter who was like, yeah, man, everybody was coming in grumpy and everybody hated each other in the firehouse. And so we instituted this one rule and our firehouse culture changed. When was the last time you heard that story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess the question would be like, is it that those stories aren't happening, or is it that those stories aren't being told?
Those stories aren't being told. Those stories are happening every day. Every day, somebody's coming into their firehouse and saying, I want change. But that's not a sexy story. That's not going to catch your eyes. You're scrolling on social media. Happy Firehouse because everybody watches Jeopardy at 7 o'clock isn't going to blow your skirt up as you're scrolling social media.
Yeah, no, you're right. And unfortunately, we have fallen into, the fire department is not immune from social media culture and clickbait culture. And,
we're just as bad as everybody else.
Yeah. And in some regards worse, because all too often we have a lot of time to sit and take part in that, and so, how the question is, how do we guard ourselves from the global tendency to blame others and not take accountability, and to, it's so easy for us to just like sit back in our recliners and talk about how admin is screwing up everything while we let our own firehouses, run wild without any accountability. And I want to transition that thought into, I recently listened to an episode that you did.
Would I have gotten easier questions if I came on 80 episodes ago?
I'm trying to really put the screws on you. Here you go. No, I recently listened to an episode you did as I was prepping for this, of The Scrap with Corley Moore, who's a friend. And you guys talked about, in jest, bringing fist fights back to the firehouse because of that accountability issue. Right. And I think that they all seem like separate things, but they're not. It all is an accountability problem. Like the accountability to say, hey, we're going to deal with this ourselves before we go running to HR or the chief or the battalion or whoever. How do we solve our problems in the firehouse because we're adults and we can talk to one another? It's gone. And when you daisy chain this to this to this, it seems like the through line is that nobody wants to take any accountability for anything.
So I was very lucky in that I had a very, very short snippet into unhealthy culture early on in my career. I was at a very, very toxic firehouse, I think 5 or 6 months, and everybody was bitching about everybody, complaining about everybody, filing complaints on everybody for hilariously stupid stuff. It just, the most toxic of toxic. And the firehouse I went to after that was insanely healthy. And the fist fight thing that Corley and I were talking about was, when I got there, the captain told me, he said, listen, if there's any issue with the guys, you guys either go on the back ramp and handle it. And if you can't figure it out there, you guys come into my office and we shut that door, but problems don't leave this house. We take care of each other. We solve everything in house. And that set the tone for my entire career. And every firehouse I was at after that had that. And I really think people maybe haven't been shown that example. They haven't been lucky enough to have that healthy firehouse where, in my very first firehouse as a probie, I was told that as well. Problems don't leave these walls. Firehouse, it's every firehouse business stays in the firehouse. And I don't think enough people hear that they have the power to do that or have an officer who supports that. I think we have created such a culture of HR. That's the first class I ever taught at FDIC, was getting rid of the HR culture, because it doesn't work. People in an office don't live together for 24 hours, right? I mean, The example I use is you go home and you're not allowed to make a mistake in front of your family for 24 hours. That's the same culture we're trying to implement in front of in a firehouse. And then we're saying, oh, by the way, have enough trust and bonding in each other to go run this really, really tricky call where you have to completely rely on each other, trust each other, be able to read each other's faces, body movements, everything. But you're not allowed to fuck up or say anything that might offend anybody in the firehouse. And we're not going to give you permission to say I'm sorry, which is a basic adult thing. So we've taken away the most basic adult skill of being able to say I'm sorry or to have an argument and to solve it. Like we both have kids. I teach my kids that they're allowed to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So it's, do we need fistfights back in the firehouse? No, but I need to be able to look at you and say, hey, Jake, you're being a dick, knock it off. And you and I can fight and we can work it out and we can maybe even yell at each other. But at the end of the day, it's going to be kept in the firehouse and we're going to have the trust in each other to say, all right, maybe we'll even leave that shift pissed off, but by the end of the next shift, it's got to be solved. Mm-hmm. And if not, then the entire firehouse circles the wagons and says, Jake and Steph, figure it out because you guys performed poorly on this call. And we could tell it's because you were annoyed with each other and didn't want to talk. Mm-hmm. That's a basic child skill. Yeah, so we're trusting our kids more than we're trusting our firefighters. It's insane. Sorry, I went long scripted off of that.
No, you're great. I'm just trying to think of how to phrase this question. Is it, who holds the burden to shift it away from HR? Is it our administrations that should be like, stop bringing us this shit and solve your own problems? Or is it my gut is that it's at the company officer level saying we having those conversations, we keep our business in-house, not because we're trying to bury it in the mud, but because we're adults and we can solve our own problems. And the vast, vast majority of these problems are conflicts, personality conflicts, not, fireable offenses. And I think that when we cross that line, I think pretty much everyone in the fire service is like, oh yeah, you can't do that, right? That's the thing, right? That you can't do. But the vast majority of the conflict I see inside of the firehouse is like, they said a joke that didn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. And like, I'm an adult and I understand jokes are jokes, or, something relatively benign. And so somebody just has to stand up and say, stop talking to administration about this. This is not a big deal. As much as your feelings might be hurt in this moment, this is literally not a big deal. But I don't know who's supposed to drive that. Is it the individuals? Is it the company? Is it the battalion? Or is it everyone has to take a bite of the pie? I don't know. What do you think?
I think everyone has to take a bite of the pie. Listen, HR is always going to be HR. They are there to protect the county and the bean counters. They're never going to change. They're never going to understand what it is we do. So we need to have a better understanding of what it is they do. You mentioned that line. There's a very clear line. If you went to middle school, you know where that line is. Anyone raised in general society knows where that line is. It's funny. Any big personality conflicts got handled by internal affairs in my old department. And I was a union rep, and I remember sitting there one day with just the dumbest, should have been an adult conversation investigation in the world. And the IA guy, former cop, inner city cop, is looking at me and I'm looking at him, and the two parties walked out and he said, can you stop bringing me this stuff? And I said, listen, I know. He said, they're adults. Why can't they have a conversation? I said, they're not allowed to. They haven't been told they have the power to. And that happened so many times. And eventually that guy quit because he was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm refereeing adults. And I don't blame him at all. It's very disheartening. It's very disheartening to walk into a firehouse and to think that you don't have the power to have conversations with each other. And I think it starts at the battalion level. And I think it then goes on to the company level and the captain, the lieutenant, the senior man on down. I think you teach your probies that when they come in. I think why it got taken away from us is because when dumb things that cross the line that we all know what it is happened, the firehouse didn't circle the wagons like they should have. They didn't say, Billy Bob, knock it off. You can't do that. You can't say that. And that won't be accepted or tolerated again. People, and I watched it firsthand, people just, I don't want to be involved in that drama. I don't want to be dragged into that. I want to say that I know nothing about it when I'm asked. That's the wrong answer. These are the people you're about to run calls with. I mean, if they F up on a call and a patient dies, are you not going to stop them as you see them going down that road? No, you would say, hey, idiot, don't do that. If they take the nozzle and they go that way and the fire's over here, you're not going to just let them go do it. So why are you doing it in the firehouse? And that's really how we got there, was by ignoring things. So there's going to have to be some tough work. You might have somebody that you really like do something really stupid and you have to call them on the carpet. But if you do it on a call, why wouldn't you do it in a firehouse? So we did create a little bit of that problem ourselves. And I think empowering all the officers and everyone in that firehouse to have those tough conversations. And also, we need to be teaching what HR is looking for and saying, hey, here's how you avoid these problems, you idiots. You don't do these things that might seem acceptable as a fireman. Like, you don't just pull a prank on probies. You pull pranks all across the firehouse.
Yeah.
You don't do things that look like they're singling one person out.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if I push back on that at all, I would say that, like, I think that there is a certain cost for entry into the culture, right? Like, I think that I don't think that anyone should be bullied by any means. Like, for sure, like, there's hard lines there. But I do think that, like, sometimes we have these new people join the fire department and then they expect that they just come sit at the head of the table because they're entitled to equality inside the firehouse. And you're just like, no, we've been working together for the last 5 years. I know everything about them and they know everything about me. And you know, who the hell are you? And so there has to be a certain amount of cost to entry into the fold. And so sometimes that cost to entry comes by a little bit of poking and prodding and seeing what you're made of. And sometimes that cost of entry comes from, you know, a little bit of distance while we like, you know, my old captain used to say, sniff each other's butts like a dog. But there is, I don't think that's flawed. And I think that an organization that is so heavily reliant on trusting the people around you has to have a barrier to entry. If we just accepted everyone that walks through the door as one of the brothers, then, like, what's that worth? There has to be some sort of cost associated to it.
So my last house, which is what I use as the example when I do teach that class, we did the opposite. When you came in, oh my God, we were blowing up your shit the first day. We were finding out everything about you, and you became one at the table. Now, you did get ragged on harder than everybody else when there were no guests around. And there were no witnesses, but it really set the probies up for when they needed to ask a question. They felt comfortable to ask a question. And where they had to earn their place at the table was through their performance. Then when they effed up, it was well known. Cartoons were drawn, announcements were made across the PA system. They were informed for at least a week straight that they effed up. But I think giving them a seat at the table when it came to the laughter and the joking and the fun, and instantly making them one of us, and everybody was an equal target at that table. There was a daily cartoon column on the whiteboard about me every goddamn shift day. But I think doing that created a culture of comfort of, I don't know this, or I don't feel good at this. And it created better performance on their end. But
I agree with you totally in terms of we have to facilitate a culture that prioritizes people feeling comfortable to ask questions. I mean, that was, honest to God, the thesis of this entire podcast was asking stupid questions to smart people. It was a presentation that I've done talking about facilitating a culture that values questions and values asking them and not feeling too proud to, because the thing that happens all too often, I'm sure you can attest to it, which is, well, if I ask this question, then they're going to know I don't know. And that means I'm stupid. And if I'm stupid, then I won't be one of the guys or whatever. But there has to be a balance to that in which people are going, and I tell this to all the people that I mentor, which is, when you ask a question, you show that you care. And when I see that you care, that makes me respect you more. So even though the question makes you feel like it's lowering your stock, it's actually raising it, because I show that you are showing that you care about whatever subject enough to ask the follow-up question, or being humble enough to say, yeah, I know you've explained this to me 6 times, but why is it this way? And so doing that tightrope walk between, I think that there's a healthy, like I said, kind of pushing back a little bit, but I don't think we're actually far off at all, which is there's a healthy distance that comes until like the familiarity comes, but we do have to have a welcome. It's not the old days where, like, when you're a new person, you show up and nobody talks to you for the first 6 months, and you sit at a different table, and your job is only to clean the rigs and clean the dishes. That's definitely not the way. But I do think that sometimes these, especially newer generation, comes in and they are expecting that they're coming into like their job at Dairy Queen, and everyone's gonna like just be their best friend on the first day, and there's no like trust building process. So I don't know what the exact stepping stones to do in order to like balance those two things, which I do think are like vitally important, especially in an apartment. I don't know how big Fairfax County is, but I imagine fairly large. But like in a department of our size, 500 people, we're not like, we don't know you, right? You show up and there's no like familiarity. When you show up from the academy on day one, it's like, I don't know you from Adam. There's people that I've worked with for years that I don't know who they are. I could sit at a bar stool next to them and they could be like, I'm your coworker. And I'd be shocked. Wow. Yeah, how do we give the amount of familiarity and trust so that you can trust me, that you can ask your questions, but also like respect the idea that we have to build some trust before you're one of us. I don't know.
We had good cop, bad cop. I was the bad cop.
Oh,
the other guy,
bad cop.
I was bad cop. Well, I was the mom on the shift. So for me, bad cop was easy. It's like yelling at a child. And then the other guy on the shift, who was my age, who we both were the senior people in terms of, I think he had 5 years less than me. And so we kind of, as parents, came together, and he was the fun one. So if you got too familiar and you started effing up or making jokes at inappropriate times on calls or not paying attention because you were getting too comfy, mom came and yelled at you. And then you crawled back over to the fun guy, and he said, well, yeah, you idiot. And he helped you along your way. Yeah. And that system, I think, worked nicely, because you did. There were a couple times, especially when you got 19-year-olds, and I came to the fire service at 19, who are still learning adulting skills and, hey, when it's best to shut up, and that level of maturity. There were definitely some mean mom moments, but it always was a nice reset of, okay, I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to go maybe sweep the bay floor and go fix what I fucked up on. And it worked out nice.
See, my method would be, I would always try to get a moment away from them, and then have it's now I'm going to show my cards to any new people that I meet, but I would always try to have a moment where I'd pull them aside and be like, hey, it's okay. You're doing a good job. We're just busting your balls. It's going to be okay. If you need anything, come talk to me.
And that was the good cop's job.
But I also was the bad cop. I was really like, it was like, hey, I'm going to give you this special treatment. Come into my office quick. I never had an office, but my proverbial office. And let's have like a one-on-one moment where I say, you're doing a good job. Everyone appreciates you. Like, keep it up. And then they get that moment. They go, okay, I saw behind the curtain, right? It's just a facade. They're just messing with me. And then they know that they have at least one point of contact inside this system that they can go to get, guidance if they need it. And then we also get to, feel them out. But yeah, that was, like I said, now my whole facade is going to break down because everyone's going to know that I've had this same conversation 35 times. But, but yeah, that would always seem to help, because I think it did make that like vulnerability moment of like, hey, just so you know, like we'll have like a little quiet conversation. It seemed to always kind of break through that nervousness. And yeah, really help facilitate that. And I do think it's important. I think it's a big, big miss in the fire service that we don't encourage our new people to be vulnerable. Like I talk to my mentees about, like, you have about a 3, maybe 5 year time period where like we expect you to be dumb and you should ask all the questions. Like nobody's expecting you to not be dumb.
One time you're allowed to.
Yeah. You're like, everyone, nobody expects anything from you. So use that to your advantage right now and ask all the questions. Like if you have, 5 days on the streets and you ask how to load the hose, everyone's gonna be like, well, of course, you have no idea what you're doing. We can help you. But now if you're 15 years in and you ask that, we're going to have some questions about how the heck you made it here with that same thought process. How have you
survived this long?
Yeah, exactly. So we've gotten deep in the weeds, which is great. But I do want to boil back and talk a little bit about, like, I try to always get these questions out because I'm fascinated by them, which is, why on earth were you in the fire service in the first place?
Oof, that's a loaded question. So I never actually, the traditional kids go to the firehouse field trip. I was bored out of my mind stepping into a firehouse. It was never anything I wanted to do. No one in my family was in the fire service whatsoever. Didn't know anyone in the fire service. Was never on my radar. And I grew up in the DC area, so I wanted to do some sort of NGO work, maybe working in medicine. And a buddy of mine said, well, I'm an EMT. I was like, well, I don't know what that means. What is that? So it took me to the firehouse. I was like, sure, I'll try that. Became a volunteer. And the very first night, the career staff pulled me aside and said, what are you doing here? I don't think they were used to females in the firehouse. And they said, why are you here? And I told them. So they instantly actually signed me up for medic school. And I thought, okay, well, fireside, it doesn't look like fun. I just see them getting on a fire engine and tailing a medic unit. I don't want to do that. So I'll go work somewhere, and I just want to be a paramedic. But got hired by Fairfax because I wanted to try. They were the only place that had CPAP practice. I was like, oh, I'll practice. Well, passed it. And they gave me an offer, and I'm 19. I'm like, oh, if I want to go somewhere else, I can. So went to work for them. And I remember our very first burn in the academy and just thinking, wow, this is fun. Like, this is the most challenging thing I've ever had to do with my body in my entire life. My lungs hurt. Everything else hurts. It's really hot in here. I am having the time of my life. And it was cemented in that moment. So ended up staying there and having a fun career.
What does childhood look like for you? Like, are you into sports? Are you like a big family, small family? What did your parents do?
4 brothers, if that answers anything.
Okay. Where do you fall in the age?
I'm actually dead middle. So
okay. Middle child.
Was definitely was not the baby girl. You could normally find me covered in mud in a tree. Definitely was the tomboy kid and played soccer growing up. So was always athletically inclined growing up, was always getting into something, just grew up outside. So it was definitely a natural fit when it fell into my lap.
Were you a good student?
No, I got the traditional, if you only tried, you could be so smart.
I don't think anyone's ever not got that. Has anyone ever not got that? Like, if you just applied yourself, you could have really been something.
Got the late 30s ADHD diagnosis. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that answered a lot of questions about school.
Well, I mean, ADHD is rampant in the fire service. I don't know if there's ever been a proven scientific correlation, but it is definitely rampant. It works well.
we did a mental health summit. I coordinate our state peer team, and we did a little mental health summit symposium here in Virginia. I think it was last September. And our clinician and myself actually taught a whole module on ADHD and neurodiversity in the fire service, because there is something to it. I mean, how it only makes sense. I don't think you're going to get people with normal brains that stay in one lane to be able to bounce around from all the different disciplines that you have in the fire service. And we really have out of sight, out of mind, right? So we can go see these absolutely horrible things, and unless there's something super, super weird or defining about it that sticks in our mind, we're going to not think about it. We're going to go do CPR on somebody's loved one or have a really disgusting extrication, and we're going to go eat lunch because we have that ability because of our neurodiversity. So I really do think there's something to that, and it's what makes us good on the job, and it's what makes us resilient.
Have you seen anything about, there's a kind of emerging research that talks about the correlation between early childhood trauma in the fire service?
I do have a friend who's working on that, and it's some interesting stuff. I want to see more research on it.
It's like, oh yeah, I mean, it checks out, right? You get all these like totally messed up people that decide that that's what they're going to do with their lives. It kind of checks out.
It does make sense.
So what year is it, for sake of reference, when you're getting into the volley side?
2003.
2003. Okay. So you're what would we call that? Fourth wave female firefighter? Like, I don't think late 80s, early 90s is kind of the start of it all.
So I was the first wave of trying to think of how to word this. God damn it, Jake. I think the first wave that stayed in for the long haul was definitely some more outdoorsy, very active, rugged lifestyle females. And I think they probably all came in more in their late 20s and 30s. I was in the first wave of younger females that were coming right out of high school or right out of college into the fire service. I know they had a whole powwow at the academy when I came in. Because of my age, the officer in charge of that class wanted to be like, hey, you've got a 19, 20-year-old female coming in. Here are the rules for this kind of thing. So it was definitely something that you wouldn't hear of today, because we've had so many generations of females come in.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you had a full career. How does someone do that? Like, it seems like a simple question, but it's repeatedly screwed up in terms of females in the fire service, and oftentimes of no fault of their own. But it is when I talk to my friends in the fire service that are female, I'm like, you guys are fighting a tremendously uphill battle. I mean, from the physicality to the heavily male-dominated field and all the garbage that comes with that. How do you do it and do it successfully despite all the, I think it's way harder to be a female firefighter than it is to be a male firefighter. It's like you can have like fatty Boomba Laddie off the couch, and he's a guy, and he can like be a slightly below average performer just like off the couch. And like females have to work extremely hard to do that just because their size so I'm very impressed by most female firefighters that can hang, because they have to work so much harder to do it than the guys a lot of the time. And when they do it successfully, it's like very, very impressive. And you worked a full career. So what's the tips and tricks to make it happen?
You have amazing firemen around you. So that officer that sat that academy crew down, he singled me out and he yelled at me so hard. And I hated him when I left the academy. And we had a conversation years later, and he said, I knew what you were going to be up against in the culture of a firehouse. So I wanted to make sure that nothing fazed you. when you walked in there. So from day one, I was set up for success by guys who said, okay, we've got this young female coming in. We are going to teach her how to handle every knock, every hit, and get right back up. And I have always had people, there has never been a time in my career where I have felt alone. I could write the most hilarious and sad book on some of the experiences that I have been through. And I can go out there and I could be this female who is pointing fingers and talking about bad things dudes have done. But for every dude who has done something dumb, I have had 3 to 5 guys in my corner going, hey, this isn't forever. Here's how you handle this. Here's how you, in some cases, hey, write that down in email it to me just in case something ever happens. You're protected. They've just guided me in so many ways. And that is how you survive the fire service. I was thinking about something the other day. I don't remember what put it into my mind. It was yesterday. And I thought, when people really fail is when they feel alone in the fire service, male or female. It's when they don't have anybody that they can talk to and trust and who can guide them. And that's all kinds of issues, mental health, divorce, whatever it be. And that's how I got through. I always had people guiding me, and I always had people making me remember what an amazing thing the fire service is. Because there are times that you definitely get knocked down as a female and you think about quitting, but that somebody you love and trust comes along and says, hey, we're going to get through this. We're going to get out of it. Take my hand. I will stand up for you. And it makes all the difference in the world. It's when nobody's sticking up for you, or when nobody's advising you, or when nobody believes in you that you don't make it through.
Circling back to kind of earlier conversation about that kind of HR culture and handling things in-house versus outside of the house, how does a female in the fire service know where the line is and when it's time to talk to somebody else besides the people around her?
So that's an interesting story. When I was getting ready to retire, because David Rhodes had offered me this amazing position with Firefighter Nation, but B, because my body was I was dislocating my shoulder randomly. Like anytime I would go to throw a ladder, it would literally pop out of socket, which was really bad because you'd have to pop back in. Really hurt. My body was telling me that you were done. And I was also doing union work, getting ready to wrap everything up. And somebody brought something to me. And they said, hey, can you rep this person? And they said, I'm not sure I believe this person because this dude that they're making the complaint again is so well loved. And I went, oh my God, I believe this person because this person, when they became an officer, was my officer, and they did this exact same thing to me. And there was such a sense of guilt because I was raised in that nothing ever leaves the firehouse. And it really made me sit down and go, okay, I screwed the pooch. And this was 10, 11 years later, I really screwed the pooch because this person has now been made miserable by this person that I never turned in. And I guarantee there's probably a lot of people along the lines. And I think when you speak up and when you say something you have to figure out what your version of egregious is. Because I promise you that if that person is ballsy enough to do that with you or to try to coerce you or whatever it is, they're going to go on to the next person, the next person, the next person until they find somebody that they can bully and make cave. And it is hard. It is a hard decision to have to make, especially when you look at some people and they might be incredibly popular. And I look at that situation and go, okay, how many other women did I set up for failure? Because all these situations in my career, I handled quietly and I handled by myself. Some of them, I didn't even ask other dudes for advice. I just handled it. And it's a crappy place to be as a female. And that's something I always urge guys to think about when they say, oh, she doesn't talk to anybody at the table, or they'll tell me different symptoms. And it's, well, hey, pull back and realize that this is what she might be dealing with. You know, does she not hang out with you guys only when a certain person's in the room? Consider that there might be an issue there.
What do female firefighters deal with that people don't know about?
Other than a lot of really dumb comments, and it was funny. So my very first day in a firehouse, I had this old salty Long Island captain who had made statements about not being happy that his last probie was going to be a female, and on our telestaff. So I'm going to date myself. Nokia cell phones were still the thing, the brick cell phones. And, people were finally starting to get the flip cell phones. So they had just started putting people's cell phone numbers under staffing and telestaff. And I didn't know that. So anybody could go look up your number. And somebody, my very first day in the firehouse, looked up my cell phone number, said, hey, I saw you in the academy, and called me and had a conversation that was not very welcome. And I had to go to that officer who already didn't want a female firefighter and say, how did this person get my phone number? How do I remove it from places? I don't want anybody to get my phone number. And that just set off a verbal shitstorm. I think something people don't realize how much females have to deal with is politely telling people to go F off without creating an enemy that can go then maybe start rumors and other retaliatory behavior. I think that's something that they don't talk about a whole lot, that they try to keep quiet because they don't want to be seen as a troublemaker or inviting that kind of behavior. Oh, you only looked up your number because you were acting this way. No, some dudes really are that stupid. I don't know if you have seen some dumb things dudes have said in the firehouse. I think we can all admit some dudes are that stupid. I would say that, and also our bodies do break down faster. So not only do we have to work twice as hard, but we also have to be twice as healthy to make sure that we physically don't break down, because the second we get an injury, it's, oh, she just wants to be off the line, or she wants a break on light duty. Yeah, no, nobody wants a break. Well, some people want a break on light duty, but many people don't. For many people, light duty is torture.
So what does walking away look like after 20 years?
Ooh. I thought it was the perfect time, because also I had an officer come in, and I remembered when he was a little kid and his dad was on the job. So already I was like, all right, it's time to go. It's time for a new generation. And I thought between that and the injuries I was dealing with, I thought it was the perfect time to walk away. And I thought that because of all those things, it would be so easy. I was very surprised how much I missed and how much I second guessed it in so many ways, because coming in right out of high school, this is how all your adult habits are formed. Your personality is formed. If you come into the fire service young, in your 20s at all, it becomes so much a part of how you react to things and do things. And it was just the little stuff that really got to me. For example, I moved from the DC area down here to city of Richmond, and just going on a walk and walking past all these homeless people, thinking, I don't have a single story about any of these people. I don't know any of their names. Like, I'm walking past all these buildings that I've never been in, versus I grew up in the area where I worked. So, you can't go anywhere where you don't have a story. All of a sudden, being somewhere and feeling so disconnected from society was something that really surprised me. I mean, we talk about not feeling as useful when you come off the job. I was very surprised by how disconnected the world is from each other. And you don't have that view when you're on the job. So society going out there fighting and being all dramatic, I don't think we understand how little they truly interact with each other because we are so used to having all these daily meaningful interactions with people. We help people every day. I know that sounds cliche, but we do. Even if it's just changing a tire, we're in touch with the community in a valuable way. People are not in touch with each other in a valuable way. And that is a very weird thing to discover. You really miss people when you retire. I know that sounds crazy, especially because I'm not like the biggest extrovert, but.
Has your work with Firefighter Nation and FDIC kept you in touch with that community? Or is it, I've heard some people say that like you can stay in touch, but there is a tangible break once you leave. I'd be interested to get your take because most people don't leave the fire service and then work full-time in the fire service media group. So is it different or is it the same?
It's different because listen, I'm not in the suck anymore. I am not sleep deprived from being up all night. The things that they're going through, that bond is broken because so in a firehouse, you just have that bond of just all the crap you're going through about your day and the sleep deprivation, maybe a really dumb new SOP that's shaken up the department, whatever it is, you have all these factors that mutually bond you. I am removed from that now and I'm getting all my meals. I'm getting too many meals, actually. I'm getting all my meals on time. I can PT whenever I want. If I'm sleep deprived, it's my own fault. And those bonding factors, it's just different. Even if you see old friends and shift mates and they're excited to see you, there's just still something different. And it's this cord, this invisible cord gets cut. So even if you're instructing, writing, whatever it is, you're no longer going through those things.
So then what is the goal with Firefighter Nation? Obviously it was aspirational enough to cause you to leave your job and take on this new role. What do you want to accomplish there?
So something, and we talked about this earlier, I don't think firefighters realize how much they can change and save the fire service. It's yours for the taking. It is your firehouse, your battalion, your department, your industry as a whole. And what I wanted to create was this space where people could inspire each other with practical solutions, with personal stories, whatever it is. One of the biggest issues I had in the fire service was, I remember when I started my fire engineering podcast, I think it was 2022, and then I started writing for fire engineering, and a battalion chief said to me, "Oh my God, you're just a technician. I can't believe you're doing this stuff." And I hated that. I hated that the thought process was, well, only officers or only beloved people, whatever it was, this small subsect of people can have an influence on the fire service. No, anybody can have an influence on the fire service. And that's really what Firefighter Nation is about, is take this product, take this written word, take this post, take whatever this is, find some inspiration in it, or find an answer as to how to move your problem forward and solve it. Because we shouldn't be waiting for officers or chiefs, and that's no disrespect to them, but it's the people in the firehouse who get stuff done. So why would we not solve our problems in the fire service? And that's what I wanted Firefighter Nation to be about.
All right. I will let you go. Unfortunately, like I was saying earlier, I have to go to work because I work a 40-hour week now, and my life is depressing.
I appreciate you taking the time off.
My recent thing I've been doing with my wife is sending her pictures of me doing menial tasks like organizing a schedule or painting a box and saying, today's episode of I Used to Be a Fireman, I am, doing this thing that's not as fun as being a fireman. But I appreciate you coming on, taking the time to chat. Let the people know where they can find more information about Firefighter Nation and 5 After Midnight. Anything else you'd want to say?
Ooh, 5 After Midnight is on pause. I actually just started a new podcast with Chris Scott called Quick Knock. It's less than half an hour.
Whoa.
So, yeah, I know. I just wanted to
Good for
get
you.
in, get out, be done with it. Yeah. Making fun of each other, throwing some news items your way, and then getting it over with. Firefighter Nation, firefighterNation.com. And then on social media, it's under that as well. And if you want to write, if you want to podcast and you don't know how, or you maybe feel like you need some training wheels and some work and guidance on it, reach out to me. You can find me on social media. There should be more voices in the fire service, not less. And there should be more opinions in the fire service, not less. So
that might have been the hot take to start out with in the beginning of this thing.
You know what? Bobby Halton told me that.
Well, so he's a pretty good source.
The first article I ever wrote for fire engineering was on medical marijuana in the fire service, and I was terrified. And I sent him an email, and I said, "Is this okay? Am I in trouble? Like, what's going on with this? And by the way, thank you for publishing it, because I think I had been a podcaster with them for about 6 months." And that was his answer to me, and I was very, very surprised by that, not just because I was writing something about medical pot, but being a female in the fire service, that wasn't necessarily something I had heard. So that is Bobby Halton's hot take.
Well, I think it's a pretty good take. I think that it's controversial, but I think that it's okay for some controversy because you got to rattle the cages to make some changes. So that's good. Well, thanks again, Stephanie, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.